The morning sun rose over the golden wheat fields of New Eden, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Governor Kim Tae-ho stood on his office balcony, watching the farmers begin their daily work. Massive harvesting machines moved through the fields like gentle giants, collecting grain that would feed millions of people back on Earth. New Eden was humanity's greatest success story. The planet was perfect for growing food, rich soil, clean water, and a climate that never got too hot or too cold. For 15 years, Kim Tae-ho had watched the colony grow from a small settlement of 10,000 people into a thriving world of over 2 million souls. Dr. Park Sun-mi walked into the governor's office carrying her morning report. She was the colony's chief scientist, and her work had made New Eden incredibly productive. "The harvest numbers are in," she said with a smile. "We're producing 30% more food than last year." Kim Tae-ho nodded approvingly. "Earth will be pleased. How are the new crops doing?" "Better than expected. The modified rice is growing well in the southern valleys, and the fruit trees we planted last season are already bearing fruit." "Park." Sun-mi set down her tablet and looked out at the fields. "Sometimes I can't believe how lucky we got with this planet." Down in the communications center, Jin Hye-jin was monitoring the daily reports from other human colonies. She was young, only 25, but she had a talent for organizing information. Her job was to keep track of everything happening in human space and report any problems to the governor. Today, something was different. The usual chatter from Earth was filled with worried voices talking about alien ships moving near human territory. Jin Hye-jin frowned as she listened to the reports. The Galactic Confederation had been making threats lately, but nobody thought they would actually do anything. Commander Lee Do-hyun was in the military base reviewing his defense plans. New Eden only had 12,000 soldiers and a small fleet of patrol ships. They were enough to handle pirates or minor threats, but they were never meant to fight a real war. Lee Do-hyun had served in Earth's military for 20 years before coming to New Eden. He knew the colony's defenses were weak, but everyone said they would never be needed. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. 3 alien ships dropped out of hyperspace near New Eden and requested permission to land. Kim Tae-ho was surprised. Alien visitors were rare, and these ships belonged to the Vorthak Empire, one of the most powerful members of the Galactic Confederation. The alien delegation was led by a tall reptilian creature named Ambassador Kethvar. The Vorthak looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs with sharp teeth and cold, calculating eyes. Kethvar spoke perfect human language, which somehow made him even more unsettling. "Governor Kim Tae-ho," Kethvar said in his harsh voice, "I bring an important message from the Galactic Confederation." Kim Tae-ho tried to remain calm. "Welcome to New Eden, Ambassador. How can we help you?" Kethvar's eyes scanned the room before settling on the governor. "Your species has been expanding too quickly. You have claimed too many worlds, grown too fast. The Confederation has decided that humanity must be controlled." "Controlled?" Kim Tae-ho felt his heart racing. "We have done nothing wrong. We follow all galactic laws." "Laws change," Kethvar replied coldly. "New Eden has been selected as an example. You have 24 hours to evacuate this planet completely. After that time, any humans remaining will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." Dr. Park Sun-mi stepped forward. "That's impossible. We have over 2 million people here. We don't have enough ships to evacuate everyone in 24 hours. Kethvar showed his sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. "That is not our problem. You have your warning." He turned and walked toward the door. 24 hours, Governor. Use them wisely." After the aliens left, Kim Tae-ho called an emergency meeting. Commander Lee Do-hyun, Dr. Park Sun-mi, and Jin Hye-jin gathered in the war room along with other colony leaders. The mood was grim. "How many people can we evacuate?" Kim Tae-ho asked. Lee Do-hyun checked his numbers. "We have 50 cargo ships and 20 passenger vessels. Working non-stop, we might be able to evacuate 50,000 people. Maybe 75,000 if we pack them in tight. That's not even 5% of our population," Dr. Park Sun-mi said quietly. Kim Tae-ho looked around the room. Then, we have to try to negotiate. Jin Hyejin, send a message to Earth immediately. Tell them what's happening. Jin Hyejin nodded. It will take 6 months for the message to reach Earth, and 6 months for any help to get back here. I know, Kim Tae-ho said, but they need to know. Lee Do-hyun stood up. Governor, I need to prepare our defenses. If they're really planning to attack, we have to try to protect our people. Do what you can, Commander. But we all know how this will end if they really mean to attack us. The next 24 hours passed like a nightmare. Every available ship was loaded with evacuees, mostly children and essential personnel. Dr. Park Sun-mi worked frantically to save her research data and seed samples. If New Eden was destroyed, at least her work might survive to help other colonies. Jin stayed at her post, sending constant updates to Earth and other human worlds. She made sure every detail of what was happening was recorded and transmitted. If the worst happened, she wanted the rest of humanity to know exactly what the aliens had done. As the deadline approached, Kim Tae-ho made a final attempt at diplomacy. He contacted the Vorthak ships and offered to discuss terms, to find some way to resolve the situation peacefully. But Kethvar's response was cold and final. Your time is up, Governor. Any ships that remain in this system will be destroyed. This is your final warning. Commander Lee Do-hyun's small fleet of patrol ships took position between the alien vessels and the planet. They were hopelessly outgunned, but they would not abandon their people without a fight. The last transport ship lifted off from New Eden's main spaceport, carrying 50,000 refugees to safety. Dr. Park Sun-mi was on that ship along with her precious research data. She pressed her face against the window, watching her beautiful world fall away below her. Kim Tae-ho remained in the governor's mansion with the 2 million colonists who could not be evacuated. Jin Hyejin stayed at her communication post, determined to record whatever happened next. In the darkness of space above New Eden, the Vorthak fleet moved into attack position. 200 warships, armed with weapons that could turn continents into glass. Admiral Kethvar, who had been promoted from ambassador to fleet commander, gave the order that would change human history forever. The first plasma bombardment lit up the night sky of New Eden like a second sun. The war for humanity's future had begun. The first explosion shook the ground so hard that Jin Hyejin was thrown from her chair. Emergency lights flickered on in the communications center as the main power grid failed. Through the reinforced windows, she could see streaks of fire falling from the sky like deadly rain. All stations, this is command. Lee Do-hyun's voice crackled over the radio. The attack has begun. All defense units engage the enemy. All civilian stations begin emergency broadcasts. Jin Hyejin pulled herself back to her console and started recording. Her hands shook as she typed, but her voice remained steady. This is New Eden Colony, broadcasting on all human frequencies. We are under attack by Vorthak forces. Repeat, New Eden is under attack. High above the planet, Commander Lee Do-hyun's small fleet raced toward the alien warships. He knew it was hopeless, his 12 patrol ships against 200 enemy vessels. But every minute they bought might save more civilian lives. Tiger Squadron, attack formation, Lee Do-hyun ordered. Hit them fast and hard. Make them pay for every shot. The human ships were small and fast, designed for chasing pirates not fighting a real war. But they were crewed by brave men and women who would not go down without a fight. Lee Do-hyun's flagship, the Guardian, fired its missiles at the lead, Vorthak destroyer. The enemy ship's shields absorbed the attack easily, then returned fire with weapons that turned the Guardian into a ball of flame in seconds. Lee Do-hyun and his crew died instantly, but their sacrifice was not forgotten. On the planet's surface, Governor Kim Tae-ho watched the battle from his office window. Each flash of light in the sky meant another human ship destroyed, another crew dead. But still his people fought on. Sir, his aide called out, the aliens are requesting to speak with you. Kim Tae-ho straightened his uniform and activated the communication system. Admiral Kethvar's reptilian face appeared on the screen, his cold eyes showing no emotion. Governor, your forces are destroyed. Surrender now and I will make your death. Quick. I will not surrender, Kim Tae-ho replied firmly. These people are under my protection. Kethavar's mouth twisted into a cruel smile. Then you will all burn together. The orbital bombardment began in earnest. Plasma beams lanced down from the Vorthak ships, each one capable of destroying an entire city block. The aliens were methodical, starting with the military bases and government buildings, then moving on to the farms and residential areas. Jin Hyejin kept broadcasting even as explosions rocked the communication center. The enemy is using plasma weapons to destroy everything, she reported. They're not trying to capture the colony, they're trying to kill everyone. Dr. Park Sun-mi watched the destruction from the bridge of the transport ship carrying the evacuees. The captain had wanted to flee immediately, but she convinced him to stay just long enough to help coordinate the evacuation of any remaining ships. There, she pointed at her scanner. 3 more transports lifting off from the southern continent. We need to provide cover. The refugee ships' few weapons were no match for Vorthak warships, but they could at least try to shield the smaller vessels. Dr. Park Sun-mi coordinated the rescue effort, using her knowledge of the planet to find safe landing zones away from the bombardment. Back on New Eden, the situation grew desperate. The colony's emergency shelters were built to protect against storms and accidents, not military-grade plasma weapons. One by one, they were found and destroyed. Governor Kim Tae-ho moved from shelter to shelter, trying to keep morale up and coordinate whatever resistance was possible. But there was nowhere to hide from the orbital bombardment. The aliens had time and overwhelming firepower. They could simply destroy everything until nothing human remained. In the communication center, Jin Hyejin worked frantically to transmit as much information as possible. She recorded the enemy ship configurations, their weapons, their tactics, anything that might help other human colonies defend themselves. This is Jin Hyejin, New Eden Communications, she broadcast. If anyone receives this message, remember what happened here. The Galactic Confederation cannot be trusted. They came to our peaceful world and murdered innocent people. A massive explosion nearby knocked out half her equipment, but she kept working with what remained. The building around her was collapsing, but she had one more message to send. The Vorthak ground forces landed during the second day of bombardment. They weren't content to simply destroy the colony from orbit. They wanted to hunt down every last human survivor. Tall, heavily armed lizard-like creatures spread across the planet in search of anyone still alive. A group of colonists had taken shelter in the deep mines on the northern continent. They thought they were safe underground, but the Vorthak brought mining equipment to dig them out. Governor Kim Tae-ho was with this group, still trying to protect his people until the very end. They're breaking through the main shaft, one of the miners reported. We have maybe 10 minutes. Kim Tae-ho gathered the remaining civilians around him. There were 200 people left, men, women, children, elderly, all that remained of a once thriving world. I want you to know, he said quietly, that serving as your governor has been the greatest honor of my life. Whatever happens next, remember that we built something beautiful here. We proved that humanity could create a better world. The Vorthak soldiers reached them a few minutes later. Kim Tae-ho stepped forward to meet them, shielding his people with his own body. He died with dignity, standing between the aliens and the colonists he had sworn to protect. Jin Hyejin was still broadcasting when they found her communication center. She had rigged the equipment to keep transmitting even if the building was destroyed, and her final message reached across human space. This is New Eden. We are dying, but we are not defeated. Remember us. Remember what they did to us. And when the time comes, make them pay. The plasma beam that destroyed the communication center was so intense that it turned the entire building to glass. Jin Hyejin died instantly, but her final broadcast continued transmitting for 6 more hours before the equipment finally failed. Dr. Park Sun-mi's refugee ship was the last to leave New Eden's system. As they jumped to hyperspace, she looked back at the planet that had been her home for 10 years. The once green world was now a ball of fire and smoke. The beautiful fields where she had developed new crops were nothing but scorched earth. The ship carried 50,000 survivors, all that remained of New Eden's 2.3 million people. In the cargo hold were databanks containing the colony's entire history, along with samples of every plant and animal they had brought to their new world. But Dr. Park Sunmi knew that the most important thing they carried was their memory. Every survivor would remember what the aliens had done. They would tell their children and their children's children. The story of New Eden would not be forgotten. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet burn. Below, his orders had been clear: make an example that would terrify humanity into submission. He had succeeded beyond all expectations. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "all human resistance has been eliminated. The planet is sterilized." Kethvar nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Signal the Confederation Council that the mission is complete. Humanity will think twice before expanding into our territory again." He was wrong. Humanity would think about New Eden every day for the next 3 years, and when they finished thinking, they would act. The refugee ships arrived at Earth 6 months after New Eden's destruction. Dr. Park Sunmi was among the first to step onto the dock at Luna Station, carrying the data cores that contained everything that remained of her world. The crowds of reporters and officials fell silent when they saw her haunted expression. President Nam Ji-won met the survivors personally. She was a strong woman who had led humanity through difficult times before, but nothing had prepared her for this. As she listened to the survivors' stories, her face grew harder with each detail. "Show me everything," she ordered. The war room in the presidential palace filled with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. On the main screen, Jin Hye-jin's final broadcast played over and over. The young woman's brave voice echoed through the chamber as she described the systematic murder of 2.25 million innocent people. Fleet Admiral Choi Sang-wook watched the footage with cold fury building in his chest. He was Earth's top military commander, a veteran of the colonial wars who had spent 40 years building humanity's space fleet. But he had never seen anything like this. "They didn't even try to capture the planet," he said quietly. "They just wanted to kill everyone." Dr. Song Min-ah, Earth's chief weapons designer, studied the tactical data that Jin Hye-jin had transmitted before her death. "Look at their ship configurations," she pointed out. "They brought mining equipment to dig people out of shelters. This wasn't a military operation. It was an extermination." General Yoon Kang-min, head of military intelligence, had been gathering information about the Galactic Confederation for months. "This was planned," he reported. "Our sources indicate they specifically chose New Eden because it was our most successful colony. They wanted to break our spirit." President Nam Ji-won stood up slowly. Her voice was quiet, but every person in the room could hear the steel beneath her words. "They made a mistake. They thought we would be afraid. They thought we would submit." She walked to the window overlooking Earth's cities. Millions of lights twinkled below, representing billions of human lives. Instead, they've awakened something they don't understand. Call an emergency session of the Global Assembly. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are. The Global Assembly met 3 days later. Representatives from every human world, every colony, every space station gathered in person or by hologram. The chamber was packed with humanity's leaders, all waiting to hear what their president would say. Nam Ji-won walked to the podium carrying a data pad containing the names of every person who died at New Eden. Her speech was broadcast live to every human settlement in the galaxy. "Fellow humans," she began, "we gather today to remember our dead and decide our future. 6 months ago, the Galactic Confederation murdered 2.25 million innocent people. They burned our crops, destroyed our homes, and hunted down our children, like animals." The chamber was completely silent. Every person present had seen the footage from New Eden. The aliens thought this would make us afraid. They thought we would accept our place as a lesser species. They were wrong. Nam Ji-won's voice grew stronger with each word. "We are not cattle to be herded. We are not insects to be crushed. We are human beings, and we bow to no one." The president activated her data pad, and the names of New Eden's dead began scrolling across every screen in the chamber. "Today, I ask you to authorize the largest military mobilization in human history. Not for conquest, not for expansion, but for justice. The galaxy will learn that human lives are not disposable. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the transformation began. Every shipyard in human space received new orders. Every factory was converted to military production. Every mining operation was redirected to support the war effort. The scale was unprecedented. Humanity was preparing for total war. Admiral Choi Sang-wook took charge of the military buildup. His plan was simple in concept but staggering in scope. "We're going to build a fleet so large that it will blot out the stars," he told his staff. "When we're finished, no alien will ever threaten humanity again." Dr. Song Min-ah led the weapons development program. Working with the technical data that Jin Hye-jin had transmitted, she began designing new technologies that would give humanity a decisive advantage. Her team worked around the clock, driven by the memory of those who died at New Eden. The first breakthrough came from studying Vorthak shield technology. Dr. Song Min-ah discovered that their energy shields had a fatal weakness. They couldn't protect against certain types of quantum disruption weapons. "We can punch right through their defenses," she explained to Admiral Choi Sang-wook. "But we need to get close enough to use these weapons effectively." "How close?" the Admiral asked. "Point-blank range. Our ships will have to survive their initial bombardment and fight at close quarters." Admiral Choi Sang-wook smiled grimly. "Then we'll build ships that can take that kind of punishment." The new ship designs were revolutionary. The Vengeance-class dreadnoughts were massive vessels, each one capable of destroying an entire enemy fleet. They were heavily armored and equipped with the new quantum disruption weapons that could tear through alien shields. The Retribution-class cruisers were smaller but faster, designed to swarm enemy formations and overwhelm them with concentrated firepower. The Guardian-class frigates would protect the larger ships and hunt down any enemies that tried to escape. But Admiral Choi Sang-wook's most important innovation was the fleet's organization. Instead of traditional naval tactics, he planned to use the fleet like a single massive weapon, 500,000 ships working together, coordinated by advanced computers and quantum communication systems. General Yoon Kong-min's intelligence network infiltrated alien space to gather information about enemy capabilities. What they learned was encouraging. The Galactic Confederation had grown complacent after their easy victory at New Eden. They had no idea what humanity was preparing. "They think we're broken," General Yoon reported. "Their military leaders are celebrating and talking about dividing up human space between them. They have no clue what's coming." Dr. Park Sun-mi joined the war effort by developing new agricultural technologies. If humanity was going to field such a massive fleet, they would need to feed the crews. Her hydroponic systems could grow food on warships, making the fleet self-sufficient. Governor Kim Tae-ho always said that New Eden's greatest weapon was our ability to feed people, she told Admiral Choi Sang-wook. "Now that knowledge will help us feed the crews that will avenge him." As the months passed, the fleet grew beyond all imagination. Massive shipyards worked day and night, turning out hundreds of warships every week. The asteroid belts were stripped of metal, entire moons were mined for resources, and gas giants were drained of fuel. The human colonies competed to see who could contribute the most to the war effort. Mars built the largest shipyard. The Alpha Centauri system provided the most advanced computer systems. The Tau Ceti colonies developed new armor materials, but the heart of the fleet was built at Earth itself. In massive orbital shipyards, the flagship of the Revenge Fleet took shape. Admiral Choi Sang-wook named it the New Eden's Vengeance, and it would carry the colonists' names into battle. 3 years after the massacre, the fleet was ready. 500,000 warships, crewed by 20 million volunteers. The largest military force in galactic history, built for one purpose: to ensure that New Eden would never be forgotten. President Nam Ji-won visited the flagship before departure. She walked through the corridors that were lined with memorial plaques bearing the names of every person who died at New Eden. In the ship's chapel, she placed a single white flower beneath Jin Hye-jin's photograph. "They wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy," she said to Admiral Choi Sang-wook. "Now we'll teach them theirs." The admiral nodded solemnly. "The fleet is ready, Madam President. We won't come back until justice is done." As the massive fleet prepared to depart, every human world watched. The ships stretched across space like a metal constellation, their hulls gleaming with the promise of vengeance. At their head flew the New Eden's vengeance, carrying humanity's wrath toward an unsuspecting enemy. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you made humanity angry. Engineer Lim So-young stood before the massive quantum drive assembly, watching sparks fly as her team made final adjustments. The drive was her life's work, a revolutionary faster-than-light system that would give humanity's fleet an incredible advantage over the aliens. "How much faster?" Admiral Choi Sang-wook asked as he toured the development facility. "3 times faster than anything the Confederation has," Lim So-young replied proudly. "Their fleets take months to move between star systems. Ours will take days. We can appear anywhere in the galaxy before they know we're coming." The quantum drives were just one part of humanity's technological revolution. Dr. Song Min-ah's weapons lab had developed plasma cannons that could punch through the thickest alien armor. The ship designers had created hull materials that could withstand direct hits from enemy weapons. The computer specialists had built targeting systems that could track thousands of enemy ships simultaneously. Captain Bae Jun-seo watched his new ship take shape in the orbital shipyard above Mars. The Vengeance-class dreadnought Jin Hyejin's voice was one of 50,000 identical vessels being built across human space. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. "She's beautiful," said his executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Kim Na-young, as they floated outside the shipyard in a shuttle. "She's more than beautiful," Captain Bae replied. "She's justice." The ship's hull bore the names of every person who died at New Eden, etched into the metal so they would never be forgotten. Jin Hyejin's name was inscribed on the bridge, where Captain Bae would see it every day during the coming war. Colonel Oh Dong-woo was training the Marine units that would board enemy ships and capture alien worlds. His soldiers were volunteers from every human colony, united by their desire to avenge New Eden. They trained harder than any military force in human history, knowing that the galaxy's freedom depended on their success. "Remember," Colonel Oh told his troops during a training exercise, "we're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting to make sure this never happens again. Every alien military base we capture, every warship we destroy, is one less threat to human civilians." The Marines practiced boarding actions on mock-ups of alien ships. They learned to fight in zero gravity, to operate in hostile atmospheres, and to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. Each soldier carried a small data chip containing the final message from New Eden, reminding them why they fought. The industrial transformation of human space was extraordinary to witness. Peaceful farming worlds became military production centers overnight. Mining colonies that had operated for decades suddenly expanded their operations 100-fold. Even research stations were converted to develop new weapons and ship designs. Onie, the moon of Europa, massive factories churned out quantum drives for the new fleet. The work never stopped. 3 shifts of workers maintained production around the clock. Engineer Lim So-young had established quality control standards that ensured every drive would perform perfectly when the fleet reached enemy space. "We get one chance at this," she reminded her teams. "If a drive fails during the attack, that ship and its crew will be left behind in enemy territory. That's not acceptable." The asteroid belt became one giant shipyard. Massive construction platforms built entire fleets in the empty space between Mars and Jupiter. Admiral Park Jong-ho oversaw the construction of the Second Wave Fleet, 150,000 ships designed to attack enemy military installations. "The aliens think in terms of hundreds of ships," Admiral Park explained to his construction chiefs. "We're building a force they can't even imagine. When they see our fleet emerge from hyperspace, their first reaction will be disbelief." At the Titan shipyards, Admiral Han Soo-jin supervised the construction of the Third Wave. Another 150,000 ships optimized for destroying orbital defenses. These vessels carried specialized weapons designed to crack space stations and planetary shields. Defense satellites, orbital platforms, space elevators, If it's in orbit around an enemy world, we'll destroy it, Admiral Han promised her crews. The aliens will learn that there's no safe place to hide from human justice. The fourth wave was Admiral Ko Hyun-woo's responsibility. His 100,000 ships were the reserve force, equipped with the most advanced technology and crewed by the most experienced officers. They would be held back until the crucial moment of each battle. "We're the hammer blow that ends the fight," Admiral Ko told his captains. "When the enemy thinks they might have a chance, when they're starting to fight back effectively, that's when we hit them with everything we have." Dr. Song Min-ah's weapons development program produced innovations that amazed even her. The new plasma cannons could fire continuously for hours without overheating. The quantum torpedoes could track enemy ships through hyperspace. The defensive systems could stop almost any attack the aliens might launch. But her greatest achievement was the fleet coordination system. Using quantum entanglement communication, every ship in the fleet could share information instantly, regardless of distance. The 500,000 ship armada would fight as a single entity, responding to threats and opportunities faster than any enemy could react. "It's like giving 500,000 people a shared brain," Dr. Song explained to Admiral Choi Sang-wook. "Every ship knows what every other ship is doing. Every captain can see the entire battlefield. The aliens have never faced anything like this." Training the crews for such a massive fleet was a challenge unlike anything in human history. 20 million people had to learn to operate the new ships, use the new weapons, and coordinate with hundreds of thousands of other vessels. Admiral Choi Sang-wook established training centers on every human world. Captain Bae Jun-seo spent 6 months learning to command his dreadnought. The ship's systems were incredibly complex, but they were also intuitive. The computers could handle most functions automatically, leaving the crew free to focus on fighting the enemy. "It's like the ship reads your mind," Captain Bae told his bridge crew during a training exercise. "Think about what you want to do, and the computers are all ready, calculating how to do it." The fleet's logistics system was equally impressive. Every ship could manufacture its own ammunition using raw materials collected from asteroids. The mobile shipyards could repair battle damage or even build replacement vessels while the fleet was in enemy territory. Engineer Lim So-young's quantum communication network meant that Earth could coordinate the entire war in real time. Orders could be transmitted instantly across the galaxy, and battle reports could be received immediately. The aliens would be fighting a completely connected enemy. Colonel Oh Dong-woo's Marines developed new tactics for fighting alien soldiers. They studied every piece of data that Jin Hye-jin had transmitted about Vorthak ground forces, learning their strengths and weaknesses. The Marines would not just match the aliens, they would surpass them. "The Vorthak are physically stronger than humans," Colonel Oh explained to his officers. "But we're smarter, more adaptable, and better coordinated. Most importantly, we're fighting for our homes and families. They're just following orders, The 3rd anniversary of New Eden's destruction approached. The fleet was finally ready. 500,000 ships assembled in the empty space beyond Pluto, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. The sight was overwhelming, a metal constellation stretching across space, each ship representing humanity's determination to protect its people. Admiral Choi Sang-wook stood on the bridge of New Eden's vengeance, looking out at the greatest fleet in galactic history. Every ship bore the names of the dead. Every crew member carried their memory. Every weapon was dedicated to their justice. President Nam Ji-won's final message to the fleet was simple: "Go. Show them what happens when they threaten humanity, and come home safe." The fleet's departure was visible from Earth with the naked eye. 500,000 ships activating their quantum drive simultaneously created a light show that illuminated the entire solar system. Then, in an instant, they were gone. The Vorthak Empire had no idea what was heading toward them. Their intelligence services had detected increased human military activity, but they assumed it was just defensive preparations. The idea that humanity could build such a massive fleet in only 3 years was beyond their imagination. Admiral Kethvar, now Supreme Admiral of the Vorthak forces, was celebrating the 3rd anniversary of New Eden's destruction when the first reports arrived. Human ships had been detected at the edge of Vorthak space, not dozens or hundreds but thousands. Impossible, Admiral Kethvar hissed when he saw the sensor readings. Humans don't have that many ships. His intelligence officer's voice was shaking. Sir, there are more contacts appearing every second. The computer can't count them all, as Admiral Kethvar watched his tactical display in growing horror. 500,000 human warships dropped out of hyperspace around his home system. They hung in space like a metal storm cloud, blotting out the stars with their sheer numbers. Then Admiral Choi Sang-wook's voice echoed across every communication channel in the system. This is the human revenge fleet. We have come for justice. Remember New Eden. Supreme Admiral Kethvar stood frozen on the command deck of his flagship, watching his tactical display fill with human ships. The numbers kept climbing. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. His computer system struggled to process the data. Report, he barked at his communications officer. Sir, we're detecting over 400,000 enemy vessels, and more are still appearing. The humans have brought their entire fleet here. Kethvar's scaled hands trembled as he gripped the command rail. 3 years ago, he had destroyed a human colony with 200 ships and thought it would terrorize them into submission. Now they had returned with a force beyond his worst nightmares. On the bridge of New Eden's vengeance, Admiral Choi Sang-wook calmly reviewed the battle plan he had spent 3 years perfecting. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces grim with determination. All fleet commanders report status, Admiral Choi ordered. First wave ready for combat, Admiral Park Jong-ho reported from his flagship. His 150,000 ships formed the opening hammer blow that would shatter enemy resistance. Second wave in position, Admiral Han Soo-jin confirmed. Her vessels specialized in destroying space stations and orbital defenses. Third wave, standing by, Admiral Ko Hyun-woo added. His ships were the reserve force that would deliver the killing blow. Admiral Choi activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice reached every human ship simultaneously, carried by the quantum communication network that connected them, all. Today we honor the dead of New Eden. Today we show the galaxy that human lives are not expendable. All ships, commence attack. Captain Bae Jun Seo felt his heart race as the massive human fleet began to move. From his position commanding the dreadnought Jin Hyejin's voice, he could see thousands of other ships advancing alongside him. The sight filled him with pride and purpose. Weapon systems online, his tactical officer reported. Target locks, acquired on enemy formation. Remember why we're here, Captain Bae told his crew. Jin Hyejin died trying to warn humanity about these creatures. Today her voice will be heard across the galaxy. The Vorthak Third Fleet, the same ships that had destroyed New Eden, scrambled to form a defensive line. Admiral Kethvar had 50,000 warships at his command, still the largest military force the Confederation had ever assembled. But facing 500,000 human vessels, his fleet looked pitifully small. All ships, engage the humans, Kethvar ordered. Show them that the Vorthak Empire does not yield. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a small star being born. Thousands of plasma beams and energy weapons crossed the void between the fleets. But the humans had prepared for this moment, while the aliens were caught completely off guard. Captain, Bae's ship shrugged off direct hits from Vorthak plasma cannons. The new armor materials absorbed energy that should have vaporized the vessel. Meanwhile, his quantum disruption weapons punched through enemy shields like they were made of paper. Direct hit on enemy destroyer, his weapons officer reported. Target destroyed. Across the battlefield, the story was the same. Human ships that should have been outgunned were instead overwhelming their opponents with superior firepower and protection. Dr. Song Min-ah's years of weapons development were paying off in spectacular fashion. Engineer Lim So-young's quantum drives allowed human ships to move with impossible speed and precision. While alien vessels struggled to track their targets, human ships appeared exactly where they needed to be, striking weak points in enemy formations. The Vorthak fleet began to collapse within the first hour. Ships that had terrorized human colonies for years were reduced to wreckage in minutes. Admiral Kethvar watched his tactical display turn red as ship after ship was destroyed. Sir, we've lost 60% of our forces. his tactical officer reported in a shaking voice. The humans are not even slowing down. Colonel Odongwu's Marines had trained for this moment. As human ships disabled enemy vessels, Marine transports moved in to capture them. The aliens discovered that humans were just as deadly in close combat as they were in space battles. Secure the bridge, Colonel O ordered as his team fought through a Vorthak cruiser. Take prisoners if they surrender, but don't take unnecessary risks. The Marines moved through alien ships with practiced efficiency. Their weapons were designed specifically to penetrate Vorthak armor, and their tactics had been developed through years of study and preparation. The aliens had never faced human soldiers before, and they were completely unprepared for the experience. Admiral Kethvar made a desperate decision. Signal the Confederation Council, he ordered. Request immediate reinforcement from all member fleets. But Admiral Choi Sang-wook had anticipated this move. Human ships were already in position to intercept any alien reinforcements. The quantum communication network allowed perfect coordination across the entire star system. Admiral Park, enemy reinforcements incoming from the third planet, Admiral Choi reported. Acknowledged, Admiral Park replied. Second wave moving to intercept. The reinforcing alien ships ran straight into Admiral Park's trap. 150,000 human vessels emerged from behind the planet's moon, catching the aliens in a perfect crossfire. The enemy reinforcements were destroyed before they could even request help. Dr. Park Soon-mi watched the battle from the command center on Earth, monitoring the food and supply systems that kept the massive fleet operational. Her hydroponic systems were working perfectly, ensuring that human crews could fight for as long as necessary. Admiral Choi is requesting permission to begin planetary bombardment, President Nam Ji-won's aide reported. The president considered the request carefully. The Vorthak homeworld lay defenseless below, its orbital defenses destroyed by Admiral Han Soo-jin's third wave. With a single word, she could order the same treatment that New Eden had received. Negative, President Nam Ji-won replied. We are not them. Begin evacuation of civilian areas only. Military targets are authorized for destruction. This decision would define humanity's character in the eyes of the galaxy. Even in their moment of absolute victory, humans chose mercy over revenge. They would destroy their enemy's ability to make war, but they would not murder innocent civilians. Admiral Choi Sang-wook received the president's orders with satisfaction. This was why humanity deserved to survive and prosper. They could be utterly ruthless with their enemies while still maintaining their moral principles. All ships commence precision bombardment of military targets only, Admiral Choi ordered. Any ship that fires on civilian areas will be court-martialed. The human fleet moved into orbit around the Vorthak homeworld with incredible precision. Captain Bay's ship targeted the military academy where Vorthak officers learned to terrorize other species. Admiral Park's ships destroyed the shipyards that built the vessels used at New Eden. Admiral Han's ships eliminated every orbital weapon that could threaten human colonies. But hospitals, schools, and residential areas were left untouched. Human ships even provided medical supplies to alien civilians who were injured during the military strikes. Admiral Kethvar's flagship was one of the last enemy vessels still fighting. Surrounded by human ships and taking fire from all directions, he finally realized that resistance was hopeless. Sir, all other ships have been destroyed or captured, his aide reported. We're alone. Kethvar looked around his damaged bridge at the few surviving members of his crew. 3 years ago, he had stood on this same deck celebrating the destruction of New Eden. Now his empire was burning around him. Signal the humans, he said quietly. Unconditional surrender. Captain Bay received the surrender personally. As the alien admiral was brought aboard Jin Hee-jin's voice, Captain Bay made sure he saw the memorial wall covered with the names of New Eden's dead. Do you remember this world? Captain Bay asked. Kethvar's eyes focused on Jin Hee-jin's name, carved in gold letters above the others. The communications officer, he said softly. She kept broadcasting until the end. Her name was Jin Hee-jin. She was 25 years old. She died because you wanted to make an example of her people. Captain Bay's voice was calm but filled with steel. Today we made an example of yours. The battle for Vorth Prime lasted exactly 2.25 days. 1 day for each million humans killed at New Eden. When it ended, the Vorthak Empire's military power was completely destroyed. Their shipyards were slag, their orbital defenses were debris, and their fleet was either captured or destroyed. But the most important victory was the message sent to the rest of the galaxy. 500,000 human warships had appeared out of nowhere and crushed the Confederation's strongest member in less than 3 days. Every alien government received the same transmission from Admiral Choi Sang-wook. This is what happens when you threaten humanity. We do not seek war, but we will not tolerate genocide. Choose your actions carefully. Across alien space, military commanders reviewed their plans for attacking human colonies. One by one, those plans were quietly canceled. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Humans might seem peaceful, but when pushed too far, they became utterly terrifying. President Nam Ji-won's final message to the fleet was broadcast throughout. Human space. Justice has been served. Come home. As the massive fleet prepared to return to Earth, every human world celebrated.